What if the very thing that annoys us most about humans, their endless, seemingly meaningless chatter about weather, sports, and weekend plans, was actually the most sophisticated defense mechanism in the galaxy? Across the cosmos, alien civilizations have mastered faster-than-light travel, conquered entire star systems, and developed weapons that can crack planets in half. Yet none of them have ever encountered a species quite like humanity. While other races communicate with brutal efficiency, exchanging only necessary information, humans do something that baffles every xenobiologist in known space. They talk about absolutely nothing, and, somehow, it means everything. The Zephyrian Empire thought they had humans figured out. After months of intercepting Earth's communications, they believed they had decoded humanity's greatest weakness. But they were about to learn that in the vast universe of advanced civilizations, sometimes the most primitive behaviors hide the most dangerous truths. This is the story of how casual conversation became humanity's greatest weapon, and why the galaxy would never be the same again. Commander Vexthera stood before the massive holographic display showing Earth's blue marble suspended in the void, her 6 arms crossed in what her species considered a pose of deep contemplation. The Zephyrian war room buzzed with activity as dozens of her subordinates analyzed the endless streams of data flowing from their monitoring stations positioned throughout the Sol system. "Report," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 different worlds. Lieutenant Zorak, his scaled hide glistening under the artificial lights, approached with a data pad clutched in his clawed hands. "Commander, we have completed our analysis of human communication patterns. The results are peculiar." Vexthera's primary eyes narrowed while her secondary pair remained fixed on the hologram. "Define peculiar, Lieutenant." "Well, Commander, we expected to find military communications, strategic planning, defensive preparations. What we found instead was..." Zorak paused, his translator struggling with unfamiliar concepts, discussions about atmospheric moisture levels, recreational physical competitions, and something they call weekend plans. The commander's tail swished impatiently. "Explain." Zorak activated his datapad, and the holographic display shifted to show intercepted communication samples. "For example, this transmission was detected between 2 humans in what appears to be a military installation." The display showed a transcript that read, "Hey Bob, crazy weather we're having, right? Did you catch the game last night? I can't believe Johnson dropped that pass in the final quarter." Vexthera stared at the text for a long moment. "This was transmitted from a military base?" "Yes, Commander. And here's another from what our intelligence suggests is their space agency headquarters." Another transcript appeared. "Morning, Sarah. How was your weekend? Oh, you went hiking? That sounds lovely. I spent mine reorganizing my garage. Found some old photos from college. Time flies, doesn't it?" The war room fell silent except for the humming of various monitoring equipment. Vexthera's tactical mind raced through possibilities. In her 3 centuries of military service, she had encountered many species with different communication styles, but nothing quite like this. "Are these codes?" she asked finally. "That was our initial assumption, Commander," Zorak replied. "We assigned our best cryptographers to analyze these patterns. After 6 months of intensive study, they concluded that these messages appear to contain no hidden meaning whatsoever." "Impossible." Vexthera's forearms gestured dismissively. "No intelligent species wastes communication bandwidth on meaningless information exchange. There must be something we're missing." Senior analyst Crixtal approached from her workstation, her tentacles writhing with excitement. "Commander, if I may present an alternative theory." "Proceed." "What if this isn't a code at all? What if this is a form of psychological warfare we've never encountered before?" Vexthera's interest was piqued. "Elaborate." Crixtal manipulated the holographic display, showing statistical analysis of human communication patterns. Consider this: humans spend approximately 67% of their communication time on these small talk exchanges. That's an enormous allocation of resources for any species. In military terms, this would be like dedicating 2/3 of your fleet to non-combat operations. "Your point?" Perhaps humans have evolved a form of mental conditioning through repetitive, meaningless social interaction. By constantly engaging in these ritualistic exchanges, they may be building psychological resilience, social cohesion, and stress resistance that we cannot comprehend. Lieutenant Zorak nodded enthusiastically. It would explain their unusual behavioral patterns during crisis situations. Our reconnaissance shows that even during natural disasters or emergencies, humans continue these communication rituals. Vexthera began pacing, her mind working through the implications. You're suggesting that what appears to be weakness is actually a form of mental armor. Precisely, Commander. Think about it from a strategic perspective. If you can condition your entire population to remain calm and socially connected through seemingly trivial interactions, you create a society that's remarkably difficult to break through conventional conquest methods. The idea was both fascinating and troubling. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered countless worlds through superior technology and psychological warfare tactics. They would identify a species' communication weaknesses, disrupt their information networks, and watch as panic and confusion led to rapid surrender. But humans seem to have inadvertently developed immunity to such tactics. Show me more examples, Vexthera commanded. The display cycled through hundreds of intercepted communications. Humans discussing their morning beverages, complaining about transportation delays, sharing details about their offspring's educational achievements, debating the merits of various entertainment programs. To Zephyrian minds, accustomed to efficient, purpose-driven communication, it seemed like chaos. Commander, interrupted communications officer Zethran from across the room. We're receiving a priority transmission from High Command. The holographic display shifted to show the imposing figure of Supreme Admiral Karath, his battle-scarred carapace gleaming with medals from 100 victories. Commander Vexthera, what is the status of the Earth operation? Admiral, we are encountering unexpected complications in our pre-invasion intelligence gathering. Explain. Vexthera chose her words carefully. The humans appear to have developed a communication strategy unlike anything in our databases. We believe they may be using advanced psychological conditioning techniques that could potentially interfere with standard conquest protocols. Admiral Karatha's mandibles clicked impatiently. Are you telling me that a species that hasn't even achieved faster-than-light travel is presenting a challenge to the Zephyrian Empire? Not a challenge, Admiral. An anomaly. We require additional time to develop appropriate countermeasures. Time is a luxury we cannot afford, Commander. The High Council has allocated significant resources to this operation based on your initial assessment that Earth would be a simple acquisition. Are you now suggesting that assessment was incorrect? Vexthera felt the weight of her career hanging in the balance. No, Admiral. I am suggesting that a more nuanced approach may be required. Perhaps we should consider diplomatic contact before proceeding with invasion protocols. The Supreme Admiral's image flickered with what Vexthera recognized as barely controlled rage. Diplomatic contact? With a primitive species? Commander, your orders remain unchanged. You have 30 rotations to complete your intelligence gathering and initiate Phase 1 of the invasion plan. High Command expects results, not philosophical discussions about alien communication habits. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the war room in tense silence. Lieutenant Zorak approached cautiously. Commander, with respect, how do we proceed? Vexthera stared at the Earth hologram, her mind racing through tactical possibilities. We adapt, Lieutenant. If humans have developed this psychological conditioning as a defense mechanism, then we need to understand it completely before we can overcome it. Should we increase surveillance operations? No. Surveillance has given us data, but not understanding. I want you to assemble a team of our best xenopsychologists and communication specialists. We're going to attempt something unprecedented. Commander? We're going to try to engage in small talk with humans directly. If this behavior pattern is as important to their society as our analysis suggests, then direct interaction may reveal vulnerabilities that passive observation cannot. Senior analyst Crickstall's tentacles quivered with concern. Commander, direct contact violates standard pre-invasion protocols. If High Command discovers, High Command expects results, Vexthera interrupted. And, results require innovation. Besides, what could possibly go wrong with casual conversation? As her crew began preparing for humanity's first contact with an alien intelligence through the medium of small talk, none of them could have predicted that this decision would fundamentally alter the course of galactic history. The Zephyrians were about to discover that human small talk wasn't just a communication method, it was a window into something far more powerful and dangerous than any weapon they had ever encountered. The next morning, encrypted transmissions began reaching Earth's major communication networks, carrying simple messages that would soon change everything. Hello, humans. Nice weather you're having, isn't it? Dr. Sarah Chen nearly dropped her coffee when the message appeared on her computer screen at the SETI Institute. After 30 years of searching for extraterrestrial intelligence, she had imagined many scenarios for first contact, but none of them involved aliens asking about the weather. The message had arrived through multiple channels simultaneously: radio telescopes, internet networks, even appearing as text messages on personal devices worldwide. The coordination required for such a feat suggested technology far beyond human capabilities, yet the content seemed almost mundane. Hello, humans. Nice weather you're having, isn't it? Within hours, similar messages began appearing everywhere. How are you doing today? Showed up on the International Space Station's communications array. Did you see the game last night? Appeared on screens at the Pentagon. How was your weekend? Materialized in the control rooms of major cities across the globe. What puzzled scientists and government officials wasn't just the messages themselves, but the responses they generated. Instead of panic or fear, humans around the world began responding naturally, as if chatting with neighbors. Not bad, thanks for asking. A bit humid here in Houston, but can't complain, typed back NASA engineer Mike Rodriguez. Which game? The Lakers won by 12 if that's what you mean, replied a security guard in Los Angeles. Pretty good weekend, went fishing with my kids. You, answered a submarine captain somewhere in the Pacific. Dr. Chen found herself staring at her screen for nearly 10 minutes before typing her own response. Actually, it's been raining here in California all week. Are you really from outer space? The reply came within seconds. Yes, we are from what you would call outer space. Is rain typical for your geographical location at this time of year? Meanwhile, in the Zephyrian war room, Commander Vexthera watched the data streams with growing bewilderment. Her carefully selected team of xenopsychologists had initiated contact expecting to find weaknesses in human communication patterns. Instead, they were getting drawn into conversations about atmospheric conditions and recreational activities. Report, she commanded Lieutenant Zorak, who had been monitoring the exchanges. Commander, the humans are responding exactly as predicted. They're engaging in their small talk behavior patterns even when they know they're communicating with alien intelligence. And, what intelligence are we gathering from these interactions? Zorak consulted his datapad, looking confused. Well, we've learned that precipitation levels vary significantly across their planet, that they organize competitive physical activities for entertainment purposes, and that something called weekend fishing appears to be a popular recreational activity among their military personnel. Military intelligence, Lieutenant. What strategic value does this information provide? That's unclear, Commander. However, the conversations are continuing. The humans seem genuinely interested in maintaining dialogue. Vexthera studied the communication logs streaming across her displays. The interactions were unlike anything in Zephyrian military doctrine. When the Empire made contact with other species, the responses typically followed predictable patterns: fear, aggression, attempts at negotiation, or immediate surrender. Humans were doing none of these things. They were treating first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence like a casual encounter at what their communications suggested was called a coffee shop. Commander, interrupted Senior Analyst Crix Tal, I'm detecting unusual neural activity patterns in our communication specialists. Explain. The team members engaging directly with humans are showing increased levels of dopamine and serotonin production. Their stress indicators are decreasing rather than increasing during these exchanges. This was troubling news. Zephyrian military personnel were trained for high-stress operations. They should not be experiencing pleasure responses while conducting reconnaissance on enemy targets. Elaborate on the conversations. What topics are proving most engaging? Crixtal manipulated her console, displaying conversation threads. Communications specialist THYXX has been discussing something called gardening with a human named Margaret from England. The human grows various plant species purely for aesthetic purposes. Aesthetic purposes? Not for sustenance or military applications? Apparently not, Commander. The human claims she finds the activity relaxing and enjoys watching things grow. Vexthera's tactical mind struggled to process this information. Resources devoted to non-functional plant cultivation made no strategic sense, yet the human seemed genuinely enthusiastic about the topic. What else? Specialist Corinth has been engaged in an extensive discussion about cooking techniques with a human chef in France. The conversation has lasted over 6 hours and shows no signs of ending. 6 hours? What strategic information could possibly require 6 hours to extract? None, Commander. They're discussing methods for combining various organic substances to create what humans call flavors. The human has offered to teach Specialist Corinth how to prepare something called coco vin. Vexthera's forearms gestured in frustration. And Corinth agreed to this? Enthusiastically, Commander. In fact, Corinth has requested permission to access our food synthesis laboratories to attempt reproducing human cuisine. The situation was rapidly spiraling beyond anything covered in standard military protocols. Vexthera had conquered worlds through superior technology, strategic deception, and psychological warfare. She had never encountered a species that responded to potential invasion by offering cooking lessons. Commander, came another voice from across the war room. Communications officer Zethran was gesturing urgently at his station. We're receiving another priority transmission from High Command. The holographic display activated, revealing Supreme Admiral Koroth. His expression suggested he was not pleased. Commander Vexthera, explain to me why our monitoring stations are detecting extended casual conversations between our personnel and the target species. Admiral, we are implementing innovative reconnaissance techniques to better understand human psychological defenses. Reconnaissance? Our intelligence suggests your people are discussing recreational activities and food preparation methods. How does this advance our military objectives? Vexthera chose her words carefully. Admiral, human small talk appears to be more sophisticated than initially assessed. These seemingly trivial interactions may be gathering intelligence on our capabilities while simultaneously deploying subtle psychological manipulation techniques. Psychological manipulation? Elaborate. Well, for example, the humans are asking personal questions about our experiences, showing apparent interest in our individual perspectives, and offering to share their cultural knowledge. This could be an attempt to humanize themselves to our forces, making subsequent military action more psychologically difficult. Admiral Karatha's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Interesting theory, Commander. And what countermeasures are you implementing? We are analyzing their techniques in real time, learning to recognize and resist these manipulation attempts while gathering maximum intelligence. Very well. Continue your analysis, but remember you have 25 rotations remaining before Phase 1 implementation. I trust you won't allow human conversation tactics to interfere with operational objectives. Understood, Admiral. The transmission ended, leaving Vexthera alone with her growing doubts. The truth was, she wasn't entirely sure what was happening to her forces. The humans weren't deploying obvious manipulation techniques, they seemed genuinely interested in casual conversation for its own sake. Commander, Lieutenant Zorak approached quietly, there's something else you should know. Yes? Several of our communication specialists have requested extended interaction periods with their human contacts. They claim the conversations are providing valuable cultural insights, but their productivity on other assignments has decreased significantly. Decreased how? They're spending their off-duty time continuing these conversations. Specialist Vexrin has been awake for 37 hours discussing something called philosophy with a human university professor. When questioned, Vexrin claimed the conversation was fascinating and personally enriching. Vexthara felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. In her centuries of military service, she had never heard a Zephyrian describe any activity as personally enriching. Their culture valued efficiency, conquest, and hierarchical achievement. Personal enrichment was not a recognized concept. What other effects are we observing? The specialists are showing increased creativity in their work, asking more questions about standard procedures, and several have requested additional information about human culture beyond their assigned intelligence-gathering parameters. The implications were staggering. Human small talk wasn't just meaningless chatter, it was somehow infectious, spreading curiosity and individual thinking among her highly trained military personnel. Order all communication specialists to limit their interactions to necessary intelligence gathering only. Implement standard psychological conditioning protocols to maintain operational focus. Commander, they've requested permission to continue their conversations. Some have indicated that cutting off contact now might seem rude to their human counterparts. Rude? Vexthara's voice carried dangerous undertones. Since when do Zephyrian military personnel concern themselves with courtesy toward enemy species? But, even as she asked the question, she realized she was curious about the answer. And that curiosity terrified her more than any weapon in the known galaxy. Back on Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen was having the most interesting conversation of her career with someone claiming to be an alien military commander named Crixtal. They had moved from weather to discussing the philosophical implications of scientific discovery, and Sarah found herself genuinely enjoying the exchange. "So you're really planning to invade our planet?" she asked, as casually as she might inquire about weekend plans. "That was the original operational parameter," came the reply. "However, I find myself questioning the logic of conquering a species capable of such fascinating discourse. Tell me, Dr. Chen, do all humans approach potential extinction with such conversational equanimity?" Sarah laughed, startling herself with how natural it felt. "I don't know about all humans, but I figure if we're going to be conquered by aliens, we might as well get to know each other first. Would you like to hear about my research? I think you might find it interesting." And, somewhere in the depths of space, a Zephyrian xenopsychologist realized she was genuinely excited to learn about human scientific methodology, and that this excitement was fundamentally altering everything she thought she knew about conquest, communication, and the nature of intelligence itself. 3 weeks into what was supposed to be routine intelligence gathering, Commander Vexthara faced a crisis unlike any in Zephyrian military history. Half of her communication specialists had requested permanent assignment to cultural exchange duties. 2 had submitted formal reports recommending immediate cessation of invasion plans. And 1 had asked for asylum on Earth. The war room that had once buzzed with efficient military precision now resembled something closer to a social gathering. Zephyrian personnel could be found clustered around communication stations, eagerly awaiting responses from their human contacts. Conversations had evolved far beyond simple small talk into deep discussions about art, philosophy, science, and something humans called the meaning of life. "Status report," Vexthara commanded, though she dreaded what she might hear. Lieutenant Zorak approached with obvious reluctance. "Commander, the situation has become complex." "Define complex, Lieutenant." "Well, communications specialist THYXX has been invited to participate in something called a book club with 17 humans from various continents. They're reading a work of human literature titled To Kill a Mockingbird and discussing themes of justice and moral courage." And THYXX's response? "Enthusiastic participation, Commander. THYXX has submitted a formal request to access our literary databases to contribute alternative perspectives from Zephyrian philosophy." Vexthara's secondary eyes began twitching, a sign of extreme stress among her species. Continue. Specialist Corinth has established what humans call a friendship with the French chef. They're planning to collaborate on a cookbook combining human and Zephyrian culinary traditions. Corinth claims this could serve as a foundation for peaceful cultural exchange between our species. Peaceful cultural exchange? Vexthera's voice rose to dangerous levels. "We are a military invasion force, not a diplomatic mission." "Yes, Commander." However, the specialists argue that their interactions have revealed humans possess sophisticated social technologies that could benefit Zephyrian society. Such as? Zorak consulted his data pad nervously. Empathy-based conflict resolution, collaborative creative expression, and something called emotional intelligence. They claim these human innovations could enhance Zephyrian military effectiveness through improved team cohesion and strategic flexibility. The irony was not lost on Vexthera. Her personnel were using military terminology to justify behaviors that completely contradicted military objectives. But what troubled her most was that their arguments made logical sense. What about intelligence gathering? Have we learned anything of strategic value? That's complicated, Commander. We've learned that humans organize their societies around complex networks of voluntary cooperation, that they value individual expression within group contexts, and that they possess remarkable resilience in the face of uncertainty. None of which helps us conquer them. Actually, Commander, it suggests conquest may be impossible through conventional means. Human social structures appear designed to absorb and integrate external influences rather than resist them. They're not just talking to us, they're changing us through conversation. Vexthera stared at the Earth hologram, her forearms crossed in what was no longer contemplation but desperation. She had to admit that her own behavior had changed. Instead of focusing solely on military objectives, she found herself wondering about human perspectives on leadership, the nature of duty, and whether conquest truly served the long-term interests of the Zephyrian Empire. "Commander," interrupted Senior Analyst Krixtal, "we're receiving another transmission from High Command." The holographic display activated, revealing Supreme Admiral Koroth. His appearance suggested he had not been sleeping well. "Commander Vexthera, I have just finished reading the most unusual military report in Zephyrian history. Please explain why your reconnaissance team has submitted a formal recommendation for immediate initiation of peaceful diplomatic relations and cultural exchange programs." "Admiral, our analysis has revealed that human social structures present unique challenges that may require alternative approaches to integration into the Empire." "Integration?" "Commander, the operational objective is conquest and resource acquisition, not integration." "Yes, Admiral, but our extended contact with human communications has revealed that their society possesses technologies we had not previously recognized." "What technologies?" Vexthera chose her words carefully. "Social technologies, Admiral. Methods of organizing large populations through voluntary cooperation rather than hierarchical control. Techniques for maintaining individual creativity within group objectives. Systems for emotional regulation that enhance rather than suppress individual performance." Admiral Karatha's image flickered with what Vexthera now recognized might be curiosity rather than anger. "And your assessment of these social technologies?" "They appear to be highly effective, Admiral. Perhaps more effective than conventional conquest methods for achieving long-term stability and resource optimization." "Commander, are you suggesting that we abandon military conquest in favor of what, casual conversation?" "I am suggesting, Admiral, that casual conversation may be a more sophisticated form of warfare than we previously understood. Humans appear to have weaponized curiosity, empathy, and social connection in ways that make traditional resistance strategies ineffective." There was a long pause before Admiral Koroth responded. "Explain." "Consider our current situation, Admiral. We initiated contact to gather intelligence for invasion. Instead, we find our personnel requesting cultural exchanges, forming personal attachments, and questioning fundamental assumptions about the nature of interspecies relations. This represents a complete reversal of our strategic position through purely conversational means." "You're telling me that humans have defeated a Zephyrian military operation through small talk?" "I'm telling you that humans have demonstrated capabilities we didn't know existed. They've turned our reconnaissance mission into a diplomatic exchange, our military personnel into cultural ambassadors, and our invasion plan into a collaboration opportunity." Admiral Koroth considered this for several moments. "What do you recommend, Commander?" I recommend we learn from them, Admiral. If humans have developed social technologies superior to our military ones, perhaps we should consider how these technologies might enhance rather than threaten Zephyrian civilization. And if High Command disagrees with this assessment? Vexthera realized she was about to take the biggest risk of her military career. Then, High Command should speak with the humans directly, Admiral. I believe they would find the conversation enlightening. After the transmission ended, Vexthera turned to find her entire staff watching her with expressions she had never seen before on Zephyrian faces: hope, excitement, and something that looked remarkably like pride. Lieutenant Zorak, prepare a comprehensive report on human social technologies. Include recommendations for implementing similar systems within Zephyrian society. Yes, Commander. Should I also include the invitation we received? Invitation? The humans are organizing what they call a First Contact Festival. They've invited our entire crew to visit Earth for cultural exchange activities. They promise good food, interesting conversation, and the chance to make new friends. Vexthera found herself laughing, a sound she had never made before in her 3 centuries of life. Accept the invitation, Lieutenant. It appears we have much to learn about the art of small talk. 6 months later, the Zephyrian Empire formally established its first diplomatic embassy on Earth. Commander Vexthera served as the first Zephyrian ambassador, a position that required extensive training in human conversational protocols. The invasion fleet was retrofitted as a cultural exchange vessel, staffed with specialists in interspecies communication, collaborative art projects, and something humans had taught them called party planning. Supreme Admiral Karath eventually visited Earth personally, where he spent 3 weeks learning to play a human game called golf while discussing military philosophy with retired generals. His final report to High Command recommended immediate expansion of the cultural exchange program to include all Zephyrian colonies. Dr. Sarah Chen became Earth's first director of interstellar small talk, a position she accepted after explaining to the United Nations that casual conversation was humanity's greatest diplomatic asset and, possibly, the key to peaceful galactic civilization. The Zephyrian Human Cultural Exchange Program became the model for first contact protocols throughout the galaxy. Within a decade, 17 other alien civilizations had requested inclusion in what became known as the Smalltalk Network, an interstellar communication system dedicated to sharing everyday experiences, cultural perspectives, and friendly conversation. The galaxy discovered that the most advanced civilizations were not those with the most powerful weapons or the most efficient hierarchies, but those that had mastered the art of genuine curiosity about others. Humans had accidentally created the foundation for galactic peace through their simple desire to chat about the weather, sports, and weekend plans. And, in the end, the most effective defense against alien invasion turned out to be the one thing humans did naturally every day: treating strangers like potential friends and approaching the unknown with conversational curiosity rather than fear. The Zephyrian Empire's invasion plan was completely successful. They conquered nothing and gained everything they never knew they wanted. As Commander Vexthera wrote in her final military report, mission objectives exceeded through methods not covered in standard protocols. Recommend immediate expansion of small talk operations to remaining unconquered territories. Results: universal peace achieved through casual conversation. Status: ongoing friendship maintenance required. In human terms, it was the most successful failure in galactic history. In Zephyrian terms, it was the discovery that the most sophisticated weapon in the universe was genuine interest in someone else's day. The invasion ended not with conquest, but with coffee dates, book clubs, and the revolutionary idea that differences between species were just conversation starters waiting to happen.